Today we're going to learn about prompting for images. And my goal by the end of this video is that you understand a strategy for how to create prompts that produce really high quality outputs, like the one in front of me that I made with Google's Image Gen 4. And we're going to use Image Gen 4 for this video, but these strategies will be applicable to any image generation model. So what is our goal? Our goal is to take an image like this, which, this is like pretty good for an AI image in like, I don't know, 2024. The fork here is a little weird. The light maybe is coming in from like different angles. And this latte just looks pretty fake. The smoke, pretty obviously AI generated. And even this background here, the window, could use some work. But our goal is to take an image like this and turn it into one like this, which if you showed me this, like if you just threw this image up in front of me and I didn't know we were talking about AI generated photos, I wouldn't know that this is AI. And why is that? It's because the background blur is kind of like a professional photograph, or the light is extremely detailed. And even the steam here is like something we'd see in a real photograph. And the lens effects, the way that this mug is positioned relative to the background, just looks real. So we're going to talk about how to construct this. And I'm going to break it down for you in a pretty simple way. We're going to follow my clear prompts framework. I talk about this in another video, but an undercurrent of this video is that all our prompts should be clear. What do I mean when I say that? We'll see. They should be concise. We're not including anything that isn't instructive. Logical. We're going to start with a main action and a subject, and then we're going to add details. Explicit. We're going to give precise instructions for exactly what you want. Adaptive. That means we're going to evaluate the product. We're going to evaluate what AI creates. We're going to tweak it, refine it, and repeat. And finally, reflective. We're going to learn from each AI interaction. We're going to apply those lessons going forward. So this is a high-level framework for how to think about prompting. But now I'm going to break down exactly how we'll prompt for image generation. The TLDR here is to just be focused and logical, to reflect, tweak, and iterate. But what is our actual framework? Well, we're going to start with this equation. Subject plus context plus style equals success. What do I mean? We have a subject. That's like what you want from the image, a person, an object, or a scene. Then we have context, which is like where the image is placed. It's a background or environment. And style is just how it looks. And often we do this by referencing other works that AI might be familiar with or that we're familiar with. For example, an artist or a style of illustration or cartoon, etc. And so an example here might be, instead of saying a coffee cup, which is just a subject, we say a coffee cup on a wooden table in a cafe, studio photograph. So let's see what we get from a coffee cup on a wooden table in a cafe, studio photograph. Something pretty good, right? And I think like our previous output, we can see here, like the table doesn't quite look real. This coffee looks pretty fake. The steam also looks fake. And this isn't quite what we're going for in the background, but it's specific. And we're controlling our outputs to be exactly what we want. How are we doing that? We're doing that with a subject. We're doing that with our context, and then we're doing that with our style. So carrying this over, what's another example? The Transamerica Pyramid, surrounded by skyscrapers, anime style illustration. This is a pretty good output if you're an anime nerd. Not saying I am. Don't get the wrong opinion, but this is actually a pretty good illustration. If you've ever watched anime, this might look pretty accurate. What are we doing? Subject, the Transamerica Pyramid. Context, surrounded by skyscrapers. Style, anime style illustration. Produces good results. So we're going to take that and we're going to expand on it just a little bit. So we had our subject, context, and style. Now what we're going to do is add modifiers and refinement. So first, we're going to select our subject and context. In this example, a variegated, that just means the leaves have different colors on them. If we're not plant nerds here, a variegated Monstera albo. Monstera albo is a type of plant with massive leaves in a glazed red pot. So that's our subject. A style, dramatically lit in a garden. Portrait style photography. Getting a little more complicated here. Now we're going to add technical specifications. Lush green bokeh background with a macro lens. Now we're describing the background and the type of lens that we're using to take the photograph, the imaginary photograph. We're going to go into quality modifiers. So we talked about subject, context, style, technical specs, and quality modifiers. These are new. High resolution detailed. Might seem silly, but this actually works for AI generated photography. Refinement. Vibrant green, earthy tones, 1-to-1. So some more refining adjectives there. And an aspect ratio, which we'll talk about as well. Putting it together, a variegated Monstera albo in massive leaves in a glazed red pot, that's our subject, dramatically lit in a garden, portrait-style photography, lush green bokeh background, macro lens, high resolution, detailed, vibrant green, earthy tones, 1:1. This might even be a little complicated, but what does that produce? That produces this image, which doesn't look exactly like a Monstera albo, but it looks pretty darn close. The leaf shape needs to be a bit different, but it has the variegation, which are these white spots, and it captures that bokeh background as well as our macro lens. So that's a sample of how I'd build a prompt to get a really good output. Now we're going to break that down to help you understand each individual characteristic. So we talked about subject, context, and style. Let's talk about modifiers and refinement. 1, camera control. You can actually control the shot that you're getting from this imaginary camera. And as we talk through these things, what you'll notice is that I'm speaking the language of photography. And if you've ever written code with AI or you've tried to get any good outputs from AI, you've learned you have to kind of speak the language of the subject that you're learning. So for camera control, we're going to have to speak the language of a photographer. That's what we have to do here. So if we're talking about distance, how far we are away from the camera, you might say close up. Well, that's a close shot. Or maybe a medium shot for a portrait style shot. Or a wide shot for a full scene, very wide. Or even an aerial photo for a top-down bird's eye view. These are photography terms that often professional photographers would use to convey the types of shots that they're looking for. Now, you can also talk about angle. So rather than how far away we are, the angle of the shot. From below is kind of, like looking up for a dramatic effect. Eye level for, sort of a natural effect. I'm talking to at eye level right now. Bird's eye, again, an overview, or profile view, side angle view. And then finally, lighting. So there could be natural lighting, dramatic lighting, studio lighting, or even like golden hour. Don't think of this as a definitive list. These are all just examples. In reality, the number of terms you could use to describe these things are infinite. What we want to think about is the act of controlling the camera and using distance, angle, and lighting. And so these are modifiers that you can use for your images to evoke a certain response from AI. Now let's take a look at some examples of these. So a golden hour aerial view. So we're talking about lighting. We're talking about our camera angle of the Transamerica Pyramid. This even kind of looks a bit like a wide angle shot, right? We have a bit of a broader view, and we're getting some really realistic lighting. We're getting a really good aerial shot of that building. And now I want to walk through some more examples. So if we said for the Transamerica Pyramid only, a close-up shot, this is what we get. If we said a medium shot, you can see the difference in the distance and how the camera was working. Or if we said a wide shot, kind of what I talked about before, we're getting a bit more of the landscape. Or even an aerial photo, which is a bit more top-down than that wide shot. Now, if we're talking about the Iron Giant, another favorite subject of mine, if we're talking about from below, you can see we're controlling the camera angle to point up at the subject. Eye level, we're at eye level with the Iron Giant there. Bird's eye, much more top-down view. Or profile, which is from the side. And so, again, it's impossible for me to go over all of the different types of camera control words and terms that we could use, but these are some of my favorites. And hopefully you're starting to see how you could mix and match these camera angle, lighting, and distance combinations to get what you'd want. Now let's talk about technical specifications. And this is more of like lens type or the type of camera that a photographer would use to take these pictures. So don't worry too much about sort of the like millimeter listings here. I only added this in case you're a photography nerd and you want to understand how this works. So macro lenses are really product details or close-ups. Like if you've ever seen a commercial and they're taking like a really close picture of like, like a toy car or something, that's usually a macro lens. Portrait lenses, something you might be taking a picture of me with for a natural human perspective. Wide angle lenses, again, that's going to capture more of a scene. So like landscapes, architecture, etc. And telephoto lenses are for a compressed perspective. Now we can also look at camera effects. So bokeh is one of the most popular, and that's like the look that you see actually in this video with like these kind of like blurred lights in the background. You can also look at motion blur, which is like signals that something's in motion. Shallow depth of field for a subject focus, so you're focused on something in the foreground. Or tilt shift for sort of a miniature effect. So let's take a look at what some of these look like. So if I said an alocasia potted plant macro lens with bokeh, this is what I get. You can notice that there's like this extreme focus on the petal. It's kind of our macro lens effect. And then we get these nice bokeh effects in the background. Similarly, if we look at some other ones that we just discussed, bokeh, we're getting, again, our lights in the background. If we talk about macro lens, we're focusing on details of the subject. If we talked about motion blur, this is kind of a sad this is a sad image for my alocasia, but you can see the motion blur in the background that's affecting how the plant appears to move, or the dirt kind of falling out of the plant there. We could also talk about a portrait lens. Again, we're getting blur in the background, focus in the foreground. It's a portrait lens. Shallow depth of field, again, good for portraits. And then finally, wide angle. We're actually seeing an entire alocasia plant. I quite like this one as well. So again, the number of terms for these styles is endless. My goal is to convey to you that, if we kind of go back here, the technical specifications matter. So what matters is telling our AI, here's what the lens type is, here's what the camera settings look like. So we can kind of move on here. Now let's talk about quality and style. I kind of think about this like polish, right? We have our base, we have our image. We're just putting finishing touches on it now. Quality modifiers include things like 4K, HDR, professional, high quality, ultra detailed. Again, this might seem silly, but it's actually really important. If you're going for a photorealistic image, something that feels like it's real, using 4K or HDR, saying professional or high quality, ultra detailed, can get a better response from AI. Similarly, film types, Polaroid, black and white, vintage, cinematic. So if you have an idea in your head that you want to express, try and map it to something that you've seen before. For example, I love the movie Memento. There are parts of that movie that are largely in black and white. If I said cinematic, noir, black and white, vintage film, Memento, I bet I'd get something close to what I'd be looking for. You can at least try that, right? Color schemes. Blue and gray duotones, warm tones, monochrome, vibrant colors. I feel like image generation is really one of those things you have to sit down and just run a bunch of image generations on and get a feel for how it works. That's kind of what I've been doing here. But these are really good to influence the color and the feel. I'm going to show you guys some examples of this as well. And artistic styles. This one's huge because if you can map something, kind of what I was doing before to Memento, that's like an artistic style. It's a film type, but you could think about things like photorealistic, sketch, documentary style, Claude Monet. I'd even add cartoon, anime. Basically, you're taking a style that everyone knows what it is, that's a kind of well agreed upon, and you're mapping it to your image. A monstera in the style of a Claude Monet painting. Pretty simple prompt, gets me a really good output. And if you know Monet, you know that Impressionism is defined sort of by our focus on light and color rather than form and shape. That's exactly what we have here, right? And this is actually a really good looking Monstera leaf. I like this output a lot. Let's go through some examples. So this is for the Painted Ladies, which is a famous row of houses in San Francisco. If we said the Painted Ladies in 4K, we get this. And this is like kind of from a distance from back here. Looks pretty photorealistic. If we said cinematic, we get kind of a cinematic shot with this lovely couple there and some maybe golden hour lighting in the background. If we said Polaroid, I really like this output a lot. This is actually quite tough to tell apart from an actual Polaroid. What about vibrant colors? You can see here, this is maybe similar to our 4K shot. The colors just pop a bit more than in the cinematic shot. Warm tones. So, if you're kind of confused what I meant when I was saying like warm tones or talking about different tones, you can see this is more orange or red. This image, even the pictures of the houses. Vintage film, similar to Polaroid. Again, vintage feel, the cars here are older too, you might notice. So this is a very specific type of style, fewer skyscrapers in the background as well. Auguste Renoir. I love French Impressionist art and, very similar to Monet, we get a focus on color and light rather than shape and form. And Andy Warhol is another good example of mapping an artist to a scene. So we're thinking about mapping our styles to other types of styles that we might be familiar with. And finally, The last kind of refinement technique I'm going to talk about are aspect ratios. So if you know what an aspect ratio is, it's just the width and the height of an image. So, 1:1 is a ratio or a measure of the length to the height. So that would be a square. 16:9 is landscape. That is, longer than it is tall. So we might have something like that. Obviously 9:16 then would be more like portrait. Sorry for this terrible drawing. So we want to choose the right ratio to avoid cropping or stretching. For example, like when I'm populating images on this slide, if they're squares, I probably want a 1:1 aspect ratio. So squares 1:1, vertical, portrait 9:16, and widescreen is 16:9. So there's also classic, which is commonly used 4:3. It's kind of standard. I typically find myself creating things in 16:9 or 1:1. Now, let's talk about some examples. So we have a 1:1. This is the original on the front of this deck. And then we have 16:9. So different aspect ratios, different results. That one's pretty straightforward. Now, let's tie these all together. So these are some more complete prompts that integrate all of the techniques that we're talking about. 4K HDR, beautiful soft focus, close-up of a coffee mug, so subject, in dramatic morning lighting, taken by a professional photographer. This is sort of our one of our finishing touches here. So this is like the quality piece. We have our aspect ratio. We have some refinements. So in this prompt, the refinements are at the beginning and some descriptors, as well as our camera definition. We have a cinematic definition, as well as another camera definition. So maybe a bit repetitive, but that's how I got this shot of a coffee mug. An aerial view of San Francisco. So we have our the content. We have our kind of we're doing some camera positioning, some lighting. Again, more dramatic effects. Cityscape. So this is again going back more towards the context with the Golden Gate Bridge and downtown skyline. Cinematic photography, wide-angle lens, high resolution, detailed, vibrant colors. Pretty good. Now, this is a pretty complicated image. This looks pretty obviously fake. But one thing I want to call out is that the geography of this, like if you were driving over the Golden Gate Bridge, which I do every now and then, this is what it looks like. I'm actually really impressed. This is what the topography kind of looks like, or that's what it feels like at least. This is obviously fake. I don't know what that is. This looks really good. This looks really good as well. This is probably an artifact or something. And the colors could be improved. Like these are kind of fake colors. One thing I want to call out is that much like writing code or getting other responses from AI, you have to try again. And so I actually sent this prompt through twice. The second time I got this one. Some things to call out. I think the colors on this one are much more accurate. The geography is completely incorrect though. The bridge is way too close to the city. This is the Salesforce Tower, which is not that far from the water, which is wrong. The Transamerica Pyramid isn't in the right spot. This just like doesn't exist. This is like all fake, basically. And so in this image, we had accurate geography, but inaccurate color. And in this image, maybe the color is a little bit better, but the geography is wrong. So we can't forget to try again, and we can't forget, again, in our clear prompts, the last AR, adaptive, reflective. We can't forget to adapt and reflect and continue to try new things. And so key takeaways, we talked about a lot. Understand. The first thing is actually we have to understand what models we're using. In this walkthrough, I used Image Gen 4 from Google, and that's because it's a fun model to experiment, and it's really cheap to use with Gemini. So we have to understand what the model is capable of. Then we're going to use our clear prompts to guide everything we do: concise, logical, explicit, adaptive, reflective. From there, we're going to talk about our 5 steps, right? Subject and context, style, technical specs, quality modifiers, and refinement. Talked about examples of all those things. Our modifiers, which include camera control, technical specs, quality and style, and aspect ratio. Those are the 4 modifiers we discussed. Modifiers and technical specs, rather. These are all important, and I give you some examples of how to use each of these things. We have to iterate, as I kind of showed there on that last slide. We have to try again and recognize that it's not going to be right the first time, and it's important to kind of iterate on our results. And the key is experimentation and repetition. So you might learn modifiers that result in images that feel more on brand to you. You might learn camera control aspects that I didn't talk about, but that produce really high quality images. And the only way you can learn that is by experimenting and continually trying new things. So that's kind of my call to action, is like, go try these things out, generate some images. And this presentation was largely influenced by the Google AI docs on image gen, which has a lot of really great content on how to start prompting images. But again, I'm Matt. These are the strategies that I'm using to get consistent, high quality outputs for my images. I hope you learned something. I hope you took something away from this video. Let me know if there are any other strategies that you're using to create amazing images. But until next time, peace.